Welcome to Paperweight Investigate. I'm so pleased to be bringing you this video today. It's all about David Moir, an art glass master. And you're going to hear a talk by Craig Deacons of Deacons Glass all about David's work, his life and various other bits of information. I hope you enjoy it. I'm just doing a quick intro. The audio isn't the best. I've done my best to enhance the audio so that you can hear what's being said, and also you need to be able to understand Craig's lovely Scottish accent as well. There's some audience participation at the end, so I've done my best, but you're going to see some beautiful photographs of David and friends, and also see some of his wonderful work. So in his memory, we are putting this video out, and this was actually at a Northern Paperweight Society meeting in the north of England, UK. We meet quite regularly and it's absolutely fabulous. There's a Facebook group as well that you can join and get more information. So I'll put a little bit of detail on screen there for that as well. So I hope you enjoy this. Thank you.
Listen, I'm just here to give a quick sort of overview of my time with Dave in Glass. It's interesting because if you go and speak to Catherine, she's over there, she's got all this memorabilia and all the paperwork and stuff, so you probably better go and speak to her about the early stages of it, but I'm going to give you a bit of an overview from the early stages of Dave. Some of you will probably be aware of it. You can come and correct me if you want, Joan, Louisa or Catherine as we go. So Dave Moir, you've got two pictures of him here. This was the opening on the left-hand side of Strathearn and Glass. And over here is obviously when he was in the workshop, but we'll go into more of the history of it as we go. So, we're in here. Dave started work at Vasart Glass on the Shore Road in 1954, aged 15. He started a 6-year apprenticeship. From speaking to Catherine, she was just saying there, because having David was a similar age, from about 7 years old, Dave was floating around the workshop back then. His father worked at the abattoir, yes, yeah. And they supplied meat to the cats that went to the shore factory to fight off the rats. But I believe he was there quite a lot anyway, so obviously he was there from a very young age. Obviously this is when he was first exposed to the Vasart family and everything that comes with that, which we'll go on to later on, you know. So this is when Dave started off his journey, and it's interesting for me because I know from later on speaking to him, this was just a job back then to him. You know, he didn't know what was all going to come of that later on in life. So after he was there, I think he had a wee stint in the National Service, a couple of years, over in Senalaga, 2.5 years. When he came back, he then started at Strathearn Glass, which is here on the right-hand side. Strathearn Glass in 1962. He assisted setting up the factory in 1962, and in 1963 was the actual opening of it when production started. Dave then, he became head glass floor in 1968 down there as well. Again, there was a lot of glass workers that were there as well that Dave worked with, which we'll talk about then later on as well in life. But it was interesting for me because you look at the people that Dave's come into contact with from when he was at Vasart Glass and he was at Strathearn Glass. I don't know, this is my observations from speaking to Dave and the people who are still here, I don't know how happy he was because it was a job. Like, especially back then, 1954, 1962, like, I know Dave talked about Strathearn Glass, like it was a revolution, the equipment they had compared to when he was at Vasart Glass, because we were going forward, we were always trying to get better. But he said it was like a new machine going there, but I think it was just a job to him, it was that show, because I know from speaking to him, he had a young family at the time, he had to provide, he was working all the time, so I don't know if they had that love for glass then. It was a job for him, it was a process, which I think we'll unlock that a bit later on. So these are two places he worked. He then had a wee break from that. Watched some pictures of him. I think Neil stole some of the photographs that was shown earlier on as well of Dave working in here in the factory. So you see him on the chair working away, on the blownware. Again, this is things that he's picked up from Vasart Glass, obviously developed from Deacons Glass Glass. He's here doing the squash bottles, which I think was his kind of, that was the thing that he really pushed, was the squash bottles. He was on that process for a long time. So there's some pictures of him working in here. You'll see some of the other stuff that he made. It wasn't all this blownware. He obviously made some paperweights as well. There was a lot of paperweights were made, but some of the blownware, you can see obviously a highly skilled, talented man back then, and obviously he's building up his reputation to be a really good glassmaker, obviously a head glass blower as well. But again, I always go back to the fact that from speaking to Dave, it was a job. It wasn't a passion. He didn't. I'm not saying he didn't enjoy it, but it was a job for him. He then moved on in 1979. He decided to leave to become a lorry driver. And it's interesting from speaking to him, that's when, like, I think there was a big change over at Strathearn Glass, or getting bottled from water for crystal. It was going to a processing engraving set up, and it was something that Dave just wasn't really happy for. He spent his time in glass, and he moved on. And actually, I don't know if you can actually read in here, like, you know, very bottom, he is totally honest, he enjoys his health, he is sober. I don't know if that's the thing we used back then, but he was sober, and I would highly recommend him to anyone who requires an individual who can exert real power and leadership. It's interesting because the whole sober thing, from hearing the stories over the years, it sounds like back then there was a bit of a drinking culture, which is something that, from what I believe, I don't know if you could... It was Jack, but Dave was never like that. Dave was the guy who turned up in time for his work every day. He probably finished at bang on lunchtime, had his lunch break, he went back to do his work again, you know, but there was people that were there that were drinking, or they were doing other things, or people were pilfering, doing jobs on the side. That's something that Dave genuinely always said to me, that he just didn't do that. He was there to do his job to his best of his ability, and I think maybe that's why, when I look back, maybe that's why he wasn't happy, because of the people, some of the people he was surrounded with, you know, because there were other things going on. So it's interesting when I'm piecing it together, when I'm doing all this kind of stuff, and all the stories I've heard over the years, you know, although he would say that to me, it's like the pennies might be dropping, maybe the reason why.
Could I just interrupt on, I don't think glass was valued as much
yes.
then as it is now.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. 25 years he did lorry driving, and then Bob Hall got in touch with my dad about 2004, 2005, trying to get in touch with David Moir, because he knew he was a person who worked back at Strathearn Glass, and Bob Hall was trying to form a book, and put a book together, so he was trying to gather information. I think Moir's quite a popular name in the phone book, so I think he went through lists and lists and lists of numbers, and my dad eventually got in touch with Dave, or put the two of them in touch together. So off the back of that, I remember in 2005, this gentleman would turn up on a Friday. I'm like, who's this guy? I mean, my dad obviously knows everybody in glass, and there's always been a constant flow of older glass makers turning up. So this guy turned up Dave, and every Friday we'd make a piece of boneware, like a wee planter or something. But he didn't really open up too much as regards to the enjoyment factor of glass, because he kind of closed the door on that, and he moved on to his lorry driving. But every week my dad said to him, make sure you come back next Friday. He was always pushing. You can imagine on a Friday there wasn't much work getting done in the workshop, because when Dave turned up, my dad, as you all know, loves to talk glass and shop. Dave was answering the questions all the time, so production would usually stop that side of it. And I remember, like, because I was, back then I would be 22, 23-year-old, but I was just kind of pushing on working, so I wasn't really, I was aware that Dave was coming in, but that was about it, you know. After the Fridays, it then progressed on to Dave was turning up a lot more often, because he was wanting to be more involved, because he'd retired. And I think he was actually going to the health centre, and he was going to the social club in the afternoon, and it was a bit of a slippery slope. And he said, you know, and I think conversations with him and Dad were like, you know, Dave's wanted to do something, he wanted to feel like purpose. Because he's always had that regimented approach in him. He's always had a system, he's always had, like, you know, from a young age in the factory, he then went into lorry driving, he had that routine. So I think coming back into the glass, he's seen it as maybe a little bit of a routine and adding value. So he'd come out, and again, like, he would talk about glass, but not very much. My dad was always extracting out of him. Then Dave then started connecting with other people that would come into the workshop that he used to work with back in the day at Strathearn and Glass. So guys like Herbert Dreyer, Donald McDonald, which Dave thought this was brilliant, you know, because he worked with these guys a long time ago, they lost contact, and maybe they randomly bumped into each other. He was then also getting pushed to come down to, and we were also meeting customers in the workshop that were coming up, because back then it was a different world back in the early 2000s, a lot more people coming up and down all the time. Dave was obviously getting asked questions, and my dad was proud as anything to have somebody who had worked with the Vasarts. You know, he was steeped in history. But Dave didn't really know that, I would say, at the time, it was just because it was a job, but he kept on getting asked questions all the time. My dad was picking his brains. He was then getting asked to come into the MPS meetings. And I think, off the back of that, he started feeling valued. Like, that all these people who had all this different information that was going on, that was flying around about this is what happened, that's what happened, well, he was there. Like, you know, I can't say what all happened. I can read the history and I'm not going to repeat some of the things that David talked about in the workshop, but he was there, but he enjoyed being able to actually add value and give that information over, and that's when I really seen him turning a corner and he actually got that passion and love for glass again. But he was also, at the same time, he was a nervous, shy guy. Like, he had no confidence. So in the workshop, my dad would always push him to make a vase. But he didn't want to do it. But my dad's like, oh, you're doing it. But he got his confidence back. And he would go on the team in the morning with my dad and set up the colours and stuff, and he liked to have all that organised. But at the end of the shift, or the end just for lunchtime, Dave would make a paperweight himself. But I was busy off doing other things, and it was my dad and him that were doing it. And Dave was then, at that point, the first thing was, quite like I've probably seen the crown, this is obviously Don's crown over there. Dave would always make one of these at lunchtime, and only because he never liked any waste. He would go and get it all set up, but you could see him getting nervous at about 11 o'clock onwards because he had to make this paperweight. So, and he would make the paperweight, and that would be it. And then it was one day he came up to us because he was saying to us, he's like, when I watch you guys working and I watch your dad working, I'm in awe of what they can do. Like, I've been in glass for a long time, but your dad makes it look effortless. You know, and he's talking to me at the same time. I need to concentrate. You know, like, I can't talk and do everything at the same time. So I then decided that I would start working with him for that wee half an hour. Like, we're working together in the mornings with colours and stuff, we're having chats. I would then start setting up for him, or I would start talking to what we needed to do for it. And he kind of then changed because he wasn't then getting taught, or not getting taught, he wasn't getting shadowed by my dad. Because my dad obviously worked in Strathearn and Glass, he was my dad's journeyman back then. So I think Dave felt a bit, not inferior with it, but he was a bit nervous. So anyway, we cracked on with that and it worked really well. So my dad would then just finish at lunchtime and go away, Dave would potter around. But then after a while, he was getting a bit fed up with making crowns. He was doing crowns all the time. So we would give him the lampwork boxes, the things would break. Young Billy will tell you there's always pieces breaking in lampwork boxes and stuff. And Dave would look at it and go, well, I'll just use that. I'm like, Dave, more than welcome to use it. You know, you take it for a shot of it. So he would start piecing things together, putting garlands around things. So we progressed from crowns on to doing lampwork-based things, or something that was a bit different. But I do remember, even though some of these pieces were broken, he would get really upset, Dave, and annoyed with himself, because when he was picking them up, they would break. You'll know where this is going. But you know, when you pick up the lampwork, it does break sometimes. Well, it was one of the times that it was your dad that was actually in the workshop, and I'd been telling Dave what to do. You know, obviously he's steeped in history, but I was telling him, especially with lampwork, you've got to go in gently and softly. So I left for lunch, and it was your dad that spoke to him. He said, look, too nice and softly, because he was attacking it. He was going in, smashing it in, and I'm like, you can see my dad going, oh, that's another one broken. But he would get really upset, Dave, with that. He was like, well, why am I breaking him? So after lunch, I came back in, it was all set up. Dave got his gather, got his powder on, gave it a glory hole, bang again. And Willie just looked at me and went, there's no telling him, is there? so eventually, like, you get really frustrated about it, but eventually he found his touch again, because obviously he was getting a wee bit older as well, you know. But the best one was, we would do a whole morning's work, doing large, mediums, whatever we're doing, and you're covering in the furnace, you get bubbles, really. Like, you know, you do get gallon bubbles sometimes, well, we could go a whole morning without any bubbles. I'll guarantee you that Dave's weight, when he goes into cover, before he's even covering, Dave was thinking, I'm getting a bloody bubble here. I don't know if many of you know, but Dave was born on Friday the 13th, which he reminded me about every week. And he says, it's just my luck. Like, so he would get really annoyed, but how can you work all morning, and then I'm making a gather, and I'm getting the biggest bloody bubble in it, but then Gordon would cut them out, or I would pull them out for him. But I did feel sorry for him, because it was just one of them wings that, like, everything was going well, and then he would get a big bubble, you know. But for me, like, you got a bit of a passion for it, though, because when he was then coming down to the paperweight talks, and he was putting his stuff on the table, people were buying it. And like he was like, what's, you know, he was really taken aback by that. But it was that feeling valued. But he was then come back up the road and then be telling me that he's got wee orders from Barry Rowe or whoever, he's wanting to do this, that, and the next thing. So he kind of had that wee routine going, which was really nice to see. Let me move on here. You see some of the pictures here posted up. Some of them were up earlier on. What was it? Obviously.
The one with the group of you.
Oh, this one, yeah. But Dave genuinely loved coming down to the paperweight meetings, getting to speak to people, because he was that sociable kind of guy. He wanted to have that interaction, wanted to have that kind of chat. You know, he would come down with loads of paperweights. Joan would set them up, or she was instructed to set them up about, you know, make sure they were first set up. Kept coming down here doing talks about the Isaac brothers, and there's Jack Allen there as well, the team. This is all stuff that Dave did many, many years ago, and it wasn't maybe a happy experience at the time, but he was managing to pass that information on to other people, you know, because it was like a lived experience, which I think, you know, he only just grew in confidence from it. Going into Broadfield House, we got a demo, and I think that was the White Home, I can't remember which one it was one of them anyway. Dave went down there, but he was over the moon the fact that, like, well, it wasn't me that was helping out, it was my dad and him that was doing it. You know, he just felt, you know, because the whole amphitheatre around the back here was all full, and Dave was just loving this, you know. I think I actually got punted onto the table that day to sell stuff, and the two of them went gallivanting around for the whole day in the pubs and stuff. But anyway, down here as well, obviously with the Glass family, that is the Deacons Glass family down there as well. But Dave loved to be feeling like he was part of it. Other pictures in here. Quite a character. Like Dave was in the workshop obviously every morning, having a bit of a laugh, a bit of a big. His t-shirt here was somebody from the family got him that, the Senna lager one, because that's where obviously he was based. You know, probably the worst lager in the world. You know, we talked about that all the time as well. But I think for me, like Dave was always in the workshop. Like I would turn up at 7:30. Dave was there at 8 o'clock every single morning, but we didn't start working until 9 o'clock. But he just didn't need to be organised, because he knew he had a job to do, which was really good. So I maybe lost my way a wee bit here. Here again, actually, so we're going back to Strathearn and Vasart. So these are the people that are in the workshop, or well, some of them are more regularly. Herbert Dreyer here on the left-hand side, who's been all over Europe working in 14 different factories, I think it was, and so him and Dave are really good friends. Joan will be able to share more stories with you about that as well. Donald MacDonald, another glassmaker from Strathearn Glass. And here you've also got David and Derek Dow, another glassmaker. And Dave loved the fact that he was working away in the morning, and these guys would just turn up unexpected. They didn't book in to come in, and they would come in, and before I knew it, there was no production happening. The old boys were at the back end having a bit of a conversation, a bit of chat for the rest of the day. But the interesting thing was, like, Dave didn't know about it, but like every day we would turn up for work, but my dad would just extract information out of him. He would just ask me about Augustine, or Salvador, or somebody, and I would be sitting in the corner doing molds, or lamp work, or whatever, or grinding. And I was just constantly talking away, but Dave loved that. He loved to be talking about it. We'd get to the end every morning, or at lunchtime, we'd just say to me, I'm away home to Perth to sit in a dark room now, because that's been a hell of a morning. Some of the paperweights that he made, obviously, like, well, all the ones that turned out to be good ones were obviously the ones that were sold and photographed and stuff, but like, you can see Dave with the flower in the rain, or just the flowers and pots, the lamp work that we just pieced together. I think this is a design from Strathearn Glass. I can't remember the name of it, but it was the one that you liked a lot and you wanted to repeat it.
I think it was chocolates.
Chocolates.
I think it was chocolates.
Again, it then moved on to the fact that he was then wanting to actually speak to the lamp workers who were supplying us with lamp work, whether it was Willie or Alan Scott, and he then actually started buying lamp work because he was coming down here a lot. But the thing is, he took pride in what he did. It had to be perfect or he wouldn't want to sell it. Paperweights in here, you can see some of the lamp work's quite familiar. But it was interesting because, like, Dave would get really frustrated when things didn't work well, you know, like, especially if you had deadlines and that, but it was one of the things that as Dave knew in Glass, there was no guarantees of what was going to happen. There was other things as well with Dave, like, he would get really anxious sometimes in the mornings. You know, somebody's been in the workshop, but you see like the different coloured bases that we do for the Millie Furies, we put them in the wee troughs, and we were 10 different colours in the morning. Dave was constantly changing them around and making the gathers for my dad. But then Dave would put the wrong colour back in the wrong tub, which, if you say you've not done it, you're lying. But David then turned to me and go, "Can you fix that breakdown? Because your dad will go absolutely mental." But just because he was embarrassed because he put the wrong one. Other silly stories that he had, no, written down really now. But well, David would turn up in the mornings, and I used to think he'd just come straight to the workshop because of the time of morning. Then I then found out because he was coming into an MPS talk once that I had to help him with something in the back of the car. He was paid to put them in. And I went into the back of the car, and there was all these Campbell's pies boxes because he was supplying something down here with Campbell's pies and Polish bread and all that kind of stuff. He was one of these guys who would squirm everything away. And then the penny dropped at the fact that he was actually doing that on a daily basis. He would talk to Campbell's in the morning, maybe pick up his wee sandwich. That was early days, maybe not latterly. The doctor was telling me I had to cut down all his pastries and stuff. But no, it was a good time. And also, here, this is actually the service. I thought it was actually quite poignant, to be honest. I don't know if many can read that. I'm not going to try and read that out to you. It was one thing, it was interesting though for me, because having Dave in the workshop, he was a guy that was steeped in history, but he wouldn't always show it. He was that quiet, reserved kind of guy, and I think everybody in here, everyone knows him really well. But he would always be open for a conversation. He'd want to speak to somebody about something. If anyone had a question, he was always there. And I think that's why that personality shone through him like the whole time. And I know, speaking to Herbert and Donald McDonald, these guys said that Dave wasn't like that back at Strathearn and Vasart. He was there doing his job. And it's lovely to see how he turned into actually starting to love glass. And I think for me that comes from, I'd like to think the experience of coming to Deacons Glass, coming down to the NPS, feeling valued, all these people that, Catherine, who said that the glass seemed to be more valuable now than it was back then. But for me, Dave said if he'd known back then what he knew now, that might be a different story. But it's that was an absolute pleasure having him in. I don't know if there's any questions to ask.
Did you used to talk to your Craig about when we went to Paul on a Friday night, the Jack Allen, Frank Eisner?
Oh, it's interesting. So Dave would go out.
Some guy who blew these 3-gallon vases.
Oh no, so I've heard all the stories. Like I don't know how many of them I've actually repeat, but Dave wasn't.
These massive vases.
The stories that they tell you about what they blew back in the day was unbelievable. Like the way they did production. This was before the technology came in. This is when people actually did a proper hard shift. From 8 o'clock in the morning, I think it was, till 5 o'clock at night, or 7 till 5. Like the stories that they come away with, and I've got to it's one of them ones that was like copy paste repeating nearly every day or every week. The same stories would keep on coming up. But for me, that's lost now in modern day. These people that lived experiences, but they're then sharing that again. Been there and done it, and then got a T-shirt for it. But it's interesting for me. Like I'm just kind of aware of the fact that how lucky I've been to have people like Dave in the workshop. The amount of information, because you can read books as much as you want, but when you actually hear the real life experiences of these people, what he's been, what he's done is absolutely phenomenal in glass. And unfortunately, there is a demise in glass industry and production, especially in Scotland and the UK. And it's sad to see that there'll probably not be the likes of these kind of factories or these kind of men in the glass trade again. Maybe in Europe and stuff, but not in the UK. Anything else? Oh, it was tough. Yeah.
Which we so we also on this point, there was always it was moved sort of last time because we were children who would practically go on this, or was it? Or dirty, dangerous ways.
Yep.
And then I thought it actually loved it, but we were still and to me it's like a sweet shop. So
I agree, especially because he was obviously the head glass blower as well, so he was in charge of all these men as well. So it's the stories you would hear every day about what happened back then. Somebody was turning up drunk, or he was away off, or not turning up for work and stuff. And I think it was a tough gig for him. It was, he did enjoy it, and he got for filming it out a bit. Maybe not as much as what we had latterly with it, but.
You had all the heat to worry about, but there wasn't the comforts within the factories that you do have nowadays. You know, there was no factory control as you do nowadays.
It's fair, like David talked about the fact that he was making a paperweight. Can you imagine making a paperweight without a wood or a hot torch? You know, these guys would just gather it out of the furnace. And then that was it. He's like, we had one gather out of the furnace, we had to give it a shape, and that was it. That's all we had. He's like, we didn't have the fancy glory holes. You know, they got better at Strathearn and Glass, you know, but you know, for what these people had, the limited resources, what they managed to make and achieve was phenomenal, you know, compared to what we've got now.
You went back to the furnace with it to keep it warm.
Yes, yeah, and that wasn't very hot. Yeah.
How many people were there at Strathearn at that time?
You're asking the wrong person. Well, to be fair, I honestly couldn't answer that. It's a good question. There was a lot though. I know there was a big workforce, and it was getting bigger all the time as it was growing, especially when they started going into water for crystal. Over as well, it expanded even more. But
Well, at the same time, Vasart, we had it before working on, and now there's an industry in the factory, like kind of got about the same book that I can see.
How was the apprenticeship in Strathearn 6 years? How was it then?
I honestly couldn't tell you what the apprenticeship time is now for glass. Like, was I don't think there is, to be honest. Not that I know of.
My mum said a lifetime.
No.
When I went to the apprenticeship, he
True.
always said that.
It's true, right? Yeah.
You're always learning.
Yes, absolutely. Well, have you any more questions?
Told me, Craig, that Frank Guy's known the OBE for his work with radar. He made the case that he went in, and he won the OBE. I don't think a lot of people knew that he did that.
Well, that was one thing with Dave as well, though, like, you know,
Yeah.
even the things he didn't stand on top of pedestals and tell everybody about it. He was the guy, like, when you look at all the news articles over there, heaps of old photographs, and these are teams and stuff, and presentations, Dave's and everything. And for me, these are the kind of guys that were there and did it. You know, the people that don't usually talk about it are the guys that are always there. And it's one of the things that, back in 2004, when he first got, 2005, when he first came into the workshop, I didn't know who he was. You know, like, and he was just that quiet, shy, kind of nervous kind of guy, but he was wanting to do something, and it was just amazing to see that journey and what happened to him. You know, it's nice the fact that we were able to play a part in that as well.
Well, Craig, I think we've got to come to an end to let the audience know. Such a wonderful presentation, Craig.